Welcome to the final Euro Fantasy video and podcast before Matchday 1 begins. The next piece of content you'll see is the deadline stream on Friday, the 14th of June from 6 PM UK time until kickoff between Germany and Scotland. Be sure not to miss it by smashing the like button of this video and subscribing if you're new. We're getting very close towards 24,000 subscribers and it'd be great to reach that milestone very soon. And let's try to get this video to the 500 likes. Over the weekend, I spent dozens of hours recording 8 videos and making over 100 graphics for all the videos you've seen throughout the week, and your support is greatly appreciated as always. There are many other links in the description below for my Patreon and the Championships Discord server, Euro Fantasy League, and also Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. But let's get straight into this one where I'm going to cover all 24 predicted lineups, and there are several big changes, mainly due to injuries and in certain cases form, and some managers going for a different setup compared to before. One team that's remained fairly consistent with their predicted lineup is Germany, who will likely go for a 4-2-3-1 with Neuer in goal, Kimmich, Tah, Rudiger and Mittelstadt forming part of the defensive four, Andrik and Kroos as the 2 defensive midfielders, Musiala and Wirtz on the wing, and then Gundogan just a bit more advanced than the 2 sitting midfielders, and Kai Havertz up front. And Julian Nagelsmann confirmed that Havertz will be the starting striker in Euro 2024, and that's why I would avoid Füllkrug, despite the fact that he has a great record for the German national team. They kick things off with Scotland in Matchday 1, and then it's Hungary and Switzerland, and I have adjusted the fixture difficulty for Hungary because I believe they're a very underrated team. And overall, the only doubts I would have with this starting 11 is in the left back position and potentially one of the winger spots. So you have David Raum, who could still get the nod over Mittelstadt, and we'll find out during the deadline stream the lineups for Germany and Scotland, and we can rectify things based on those lineups we see during the deadline stream. And Leroy Sané could come in for Florian Wirtz. That is still a possibility, but Sané has experienced several injury problems. And in terms of set pieces, which is also worth mentioning, Gundogan should be the #1 penalty taker, with Kroos and Füllkrug just behind him in the pecking order, and of course Füllkrug would only enter the equation when he's on the pitch. In terms of free kicks, it will be Toni Kroos and Kimmich, and for corners, Kroos and Sané, when he's on the pitch, will be the likely corner kick takers as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and a lot of your feedback from the previous predicted lineups video and podcast was taken into account when forming these starting 11s for the predicted lineups. But let's now move on to Scotland. Not much has changed here either, except the fixture difficulty rating adjusted for Hungary. So you would expect Gunn to start in goal, and a 3-4-2-1 formation for Scotland, with Porteous, Hendry and Tierney as the 3 centre-backs, Ralston, Gilmour, McGregor and Robertson forming part of the midfield 4, McTominay and McGinn just behind Che Adams. And assuming that Robertson and McTominay are fit, Steve Clarke has 2 decisions to make: whether Ralston or McCrory start at right wing back. The Celtic defender has possibly nudged ahead following his assured performance against Finland last Friday, while the experience of Adams is expected to be preferred over Shankland, who picked up a knock recently. And the other injury that we had is actually Robertson a few days ago, but he should be fine in time for Matchday 1, and I'd expect him to start at that left mid spot or left wing back spot, and he's obviously their best player. In terms of penalties, John McGinn should be the #1 penalty taker, and for free kicks, it's Robertson and McGinn, and for corners, you've got McGinn, McTominay and Robertson in that order too. They face Germany in Matchday 1 on Friday, the 14th of June. Then it's Switzerland and Hungary for Scotland. If you disagree with any of these selections, of course, I do encourage you to leave constructive criticism in the comments section, but I think Scotland is quite nailed on with this predicted lineup. I made a few errors in terms of the pricing. For example, I put Nego at right mid and I put 4.5 million, but there is a chance he doesn't start, and instead we'll have Bola, who is a 4.5 million defender, and he'll be playing in that right mid spot. So watch out for that, and that isn't absolutely set in stone. Even Galashi isn't nailed on to start between the sticks for Hungary, but we'll likely see a similar setup compared to Scotland, with a 3-4-2-1 or a 3-4-3, with Orban, Lang and Shalai as the 3 centre-backs. You've got Nagy and Schaefer as the 2 central midfielders, and that's because Styles is likely going to miss out in Matchday 1, and the same goes for Nego as well, and that's why Bola and Kerkez could be the 2 wing backs for Hungary, with Szoboszlai, Salai and Varga up front. And in terms of the best assets from Hungary, I think it's Szoboszlai and Varga in that order. Those are the 2 I'd really look at. If Nego can nail down a spot on that right hand side at 4 million, he's another one to look at. But with Hungary, they're a very underrated team. They could cause some upsets, and I wouldn't be surprised if they top this group. But ultimately, it's Szoboszlai and Varga that really catch my interest, and Varga scored a brace and got an assist against Israel in their recent friendly, a 3-0 win. Szoboszlai was subbed off due to an injury, but the Hungary manager was quite calm and thinks that Szoboszlai will be available for matchday 1. So the biggest question marks, according to the UEFA website, are in goal. So Gulashi or Debus, and on the left side of the three-man defence, it's either Shalai or Dardai. And obviously, if I do butcher any pronunciations, I do apologise, but I'm not a machine and I do get things wrong. In terms of injury doubts, Szoboszlai subbed against Israel on Saturday, appears to be fine. Nego and Styles have trained separately and are most probably doubtful for the Switzerland game. In terms of set pieces, on penalties you've got Szoboszlai. He's also the main free kick taker, with Salai as the second in command, and for corners it's the same thing. Szoboszlai first and Salai in second. The final team in Group A is Switzerland, who are always a tough cookie to crack. They will likely go for Sommer in goal, with a back three of Elvedi, Akanji and Ricardo Rodriguez, a midfield four of Widmer, Freuler, Xhaka and Ndoi, and Shaqiri just behind Vargas and Amdouni. And I covered Shaqiri in my team selection video and podcast, and the Swiss manager basically said that Shaqiri can't play 90 minutes every 3 or 4 days, so he might start in matchday 1 and then be benched against Scotland, which is the ideal fixture in my opinion for Switzerland in Group A. And there are some doubts with this predicted lineup. For example, Fabian Schär could still come in as discussed in the previous predicted lineups, and instead we can see Ricardo Rodriguez shifted to left wing back. But recently for Switzerland, especially in the last couple of years, he's mainly played as a left centre back, and Ndoi has played in the recent friendlies for Switzerland and been quite impressive. So I think this is the likely setup for Switzerland, but Fabian Schär could still come into it, and Mbolo and Zuba are not fit to start. So Amdouni, who was their top scorer in the qualifiers, he should be up front. Xhaka and Shaqiri are definitely nailed on in terms of matchday 1, and Xhaka will play every single minute virtually. Shaqiri maybe not so much in matchdays 2 and 3. And I think this back three of Elvedi, Akanji and Ricardo Rodriguez is very likely, despite the fact that Schär is a quality defender at just 4.5 million. It seems a bit weird for him to be left out, but that is a possibility we need to be aware of. And in terms of penalties, Shaqiri is the #1 penalty taker, Xhaka is second, and Ricardo Rodriguez is third. And for free kicks, Shaqiri is also #1, Xhaka is second, and Vargas is third. And even if you have a fourth option, Rodriguez would be there as well. And for corners, a very similar kind of lineup there. Shaqiri first, Vargas second, and Xhaka in third. We're now on to Group B, and we start off with Spain, who will likely go for Unai Simon in goal, and a back four of Carvajal, Lenormand, Laporte and Grimaldo. But there is a chance that Cucurella gets the nod over Grimaldo, and in recent friendlies, I think the defence and midfield are very difficult to predict. But I've gone for Rodri, Pedri and Merino, and Pedri finally has a price in Euro Fantasy of 7 million, and the front three is Yamal, Nico Williams and Morata. The first 2 match days look very tough against Croatia and Italy, but matchday 3 against Albania, I honestly wouldn't mind 2 or 3 Spain players to target that fixture. But in terms of the recent friendlies where Spain scored 5 goals against Northern Ireland and Andorra, it poses so many question marks. Even in goal, I wouldn't be surprised if David Raya got 1 start in the group stages, but Cucurella or Grimaldo will be a decision to make for the Spanish national team manager. Also, Laporte played very few minutes in the recent friendlies, so maybe Nacho could start there, and Ruiz could be a surprise candidate to play ahead of Merino. And you might be thinking, what about Dani Olmo? But he didn't play any single minute in the recent friendlies. Is he going to be fit and sharp for the weekend? I'm honestly not so sure. So that's one key change from the previous predicted lineup. So this is the formation of 4-3-3 for Spain, and I think this is the most likely outcome, but there are 2 or 3 positions I'm honestly not sure about. In terms of penalties, Rodri is the #1 taker and Ferran Torres is second. For free kicks, Ferran Torres is first when he's on the pitch, Nico Williams is second, and Dani Olmo is third. And for corners, you've got Ferran Torres, Nico Williams, Oyarzabal, who scored a hat-trick very recently, and Grimaldo. And he's quite similar to a Frimpong, where if he starts, you've got a very high ceiling there, but he can also be very frustrating from time to time, and you can't really count on them in terms of minutes. A few Croatians corrected me in the previous video and podcast I made talking about all the starting lineups, but Livakovic will be in goal, and a back four of Stanisic, Sutalo, Pongracic and Gvardiol is very likely. So one key change from the previous edition is that Gvardiol will play left back and they'll have Pongracic as the centre back. No Borna Sosa at 5.5 million. The midfield three is very nailed on with Brozovic, Modric and Kovacic, one of the best midfields you'll see at the Euros. And then Maja on the right hand side, he's been in great goal scoring form for Croatia recently. Kramaric might be shifted to the left wing. He can play up front or also on the wings, and we could see Budimir playing as the lone striker. Croatia plays Spain in matchday 1, then it's Albania in matchday 2, and that's where I'd be very interested to load up on Croatian assets. And then it's Italy in matchday 3. Now, this is another lineup that could be quite difficult to predict, and UEFA actually said on their website, reading between the lines, Dalic will pick the same 11 from the friendly against Portugal for the match with Spain. Perisic is still not at his 100% since recovering from knee surgery, so expect Kramaric on the left wing and in for Maja on the right. For the first match, we should see Pongracic join Sutalo in central defence and Budimir as the central striker. And for set pieces, on penalties we have Kramaric and Modric. For free kicks, Luka Modric will take them. And for corners, Modric and Maja as well. Now, if any of that is incorrect or a bit inaccurate, be sure to correct me in the comments section. But a 4-3-3 is almost certain to happen for Croatia, and only one or two details really are left to be ironed out. So when we get into matchday 1, we'll see what Croatia come up with. But they're a very underrated team. I think they could go very far at the Euros. I think their best finish is actually the round of 16, which is quite surprising. I'd actually expect them to go one step further this time round. We can't forget the holders, Italy, who were very impressive in the previous Euros tournament. They failed to qualify for the World Cup in Qatar, which was a big shame, but they will likely go for a 3-4-2-1 formation. They can change the formation based on the opposition. That's one key thing to note. So one of these defenders could drop out and you could see a more attacking option come instead. So Donnarumma in goal is locked in. There's no question about that, but there are some questions about the defence and midfield. I've gone for Damian, Buongiorno and Bastoni as the free centre-backs, and thank you to those that corrected me saying that Bastoni typically plays on the left-hand side, and then you've got one of Buongiorno, Mancini, or perhaps Calafiori, who could come in as well as the third centre-back. But Calafiori will likely play as the left centre-back, and he's the backup to Bastoni, and you've got either Mancini or Buongiorno as the central defender there. I've gone for Di Lorenzo and DeMarco as the two wing-backs, with Jorginho and Cristante. It looks like Barella won't be available for matchday 1. It's a race against time. Hopefully he is available. He's a top quality midfielder, one of the best in the world. But if he isn't fit, I think Cristante will start in matchday 1 against Albania. Then you've got Fretesi and Chiesa as the two inside forwards, just behind Scamacca, who only has 1 goal in 16 games for Italy. And that's why I highlighted him as a player to avoid in that video and podcast. Now, when we look at the penalty takers and set piece takers, I think it'll be Raspadori, Jorginho and DeMarco in that order for penalties. For free kicks, DeMarco and Pellegrini. And finally for corners, Raspadori and DeMarco once again. And that's why DeMarco is my favourite Italy asset. The final team in Group B is Albania, and they've got a big goalkeeper dilemma between Berisha and Strakosha. They're both 4 million, and I've currently gone for Strakosha because in recent friendlies and matches overall, he has played the vast majority of them. But some people tell me it'll be Berisha, and others say Strakosha. So I think that's a very difficult one to predict. I've gone for Hajsaj at right back this time round, with Mitaj on the left-hand side, and Ajeti is also a new inclusion to the starting 11 with Jamitsi alongside him, the Europa League winner with Atalanta. And I've also gone for Aslani and Ramdani as the two defensive midfielders, with Asani, Bajrami and Seferi just behind Broja, who is priced at 6 million, and we have seen that price confirmed since the last predicted lineups video and podcast. They play Italy first, and it's worth mentioning, also building upon the Italy discussion, Jorginho has missed 4 of his last penalties for his country, so he might not be a nailed-on penalty taker there. But with Albania and their set-piece takers, you have Sikalashi, Broja and Aslani as the main penalty takers. For free kicks, Asani, Bajrami and Aslani. And for corners, probably Asani and Bashrami there as well. Once again, I do apologise for any mispronounced names. I do try my best, and maybe if some of you educate me, I will get better at it. But we're going to finish off with Group B now and move on to one of the favourites in the Euros tournament. They might be in awful form and they have some injury concerns and illnesses flying around the camp, but I still think England can go far in this tournament and fix things up from the friendlies with only one win of the last 5 matches across all competitions. Jordan Pickford will start in goal and a back four of Walker, Stones if he's fit and available, Mark Gay and Trippier. But it looks like Stones has been isolating and he's got an illness which they don't want to spread around the camp. So we could see Lewis Dunk and Mark Gay as the 2 centre-backs. So you've got potentially 2 very good value defenders, but I also think the England defence looks very weak. They looked very vulnerable against Iceland and in recent friendlies, and to miss John Stones, one of the best defenders in world football, that would be a huge miss, and that's putting it lightly. Recent reports indicate Trent Alexander-Arnold will start in the midfield alongside Declan Rice, and I believe those sources to be correct, so that could be a great acquisition in the defence. Of course, he's 5.5 million as a defender in this game, but he'll be playing out of position in the midfield, which for me is his best position. Then you've got Saka, Bellingham, Foden just behind Harry Kane, and I expect Cole Palmer to miss out, but maybe as we progress through this tournament you could see him eat up into the minutes of Foden and Saka and potentially get a start. It wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if Palmer started in matchday 3 against Slovenia. I wouldn't rule that out whatsoever. So perhaps the biggest question mark here is who plays alongside Declan Rice at the base of the midfield according to the UEFA website, but I think it will be Trent Alexander-Arnold there instead of Mainu or Gallagher. And Gay is locked in for me. I think he's going to start no matter what, especially if John Stones is out due to illness, and Shaw is expected to be saved for match days 2 and 3. Don't expect him to start in match day 1. Instead, it should be Kieran Trippier as well. With penalties, there's no question about it. Even if you've got Cole Palmer and Saka, who are 2 good penalty takers, it will be Harry Kane on penalty duty. For free kicks, you've got Trippier, Foden and Trent in that order. And for corners, Foden, Trippier and Trent, but it can be in a different order there, to be quite honest with you. Harry Kane scored 4 penalties from 8 games during the qualifiers, the most of any player, and he had a great season for Bayern Munich, and his record for England is simply incredible. Serbia are quite difficult to predict in terms of which lineup they'll go out with, because they might accommodate Mitrovic and Vlahovic together up front, which could cause a change in formation. So we might not see this 3-4-2-1, which I expect them to start with against England, and maybe they'll save the 2 striker formation for Slovenia and Denmark in match days 2 and 3. But Milinkovic-Savic will be in goal, a 4.5 million goalkeeper. Then you've got Milenkovic, Veljkovic and Pavlovic as the 3 centre-backs, Kudelj and Lukic as the 2 central midfielders, with Kostic and Zivkovic as the 2 wing-backs, with Tadic and Milinkovic-Savic just behind Mitrovic. But once again, it could be Vlahovic starting alongside Mitrovic, and if it was just one or the other and just one striker, I would expect Mitrovic to get the nod. So those are the main concerns up front. And during recent friendlies, Kudelj actually staked his claim in different positions in midfield and also as a defender alongside Pavlovic and Milenkovic. So there's a few details that need to be ironed out here, and this predicted lineup might not be 100% accurate. In terms of penalties, Tadic is first, Mitrovic second and Vlahovic third. With free kicks, Tadic is also first, with Kostic in second. And with corners, Tadic once again takes the main responsibilities, with Zivkovic just behind him. There are many Danes who watch my channel, and I have to say thank you very much for your support. And a lot of you corrected me in the previous lineups video because I had Kjær as the left centre back, and despite the fact that he's the captain of the Danish national team, it will be Vestergaard playing alongside Christensen and Andersen, with Schmeichel in goal, and the midfield 5 could be Bar, Højbjerg, Eriksen, Norgard and Mæhle, with Wind and Højlund up front. I believe I had the wrong image for Wind last time out, and I've also corrected the other issues and errors I had with the previous video and podcast. But my biggest concern when predicting this lineup is actually the wing backs, because we could see Christensen on the left hand side and Mæhle on the right, with Bar on the bench. But in recent friendlies, it was Bar who started and he played quite well, so that's why I've gone for this setup. But I have to say I'm not entirely sure about the wing backs. They've got 3 options to choose from, and if they go for Christensen on the left, they shift Mæhle to the right, and if they go for Bar on the right, then they'll probably put Mæhle on the left. That's the way I look at it, but I could be wrong. And also perhaps the third centre mid slot. You could see Delaney, but if not, it could be Norgard, and they've also got a few other options in that position like Højlund. So that's very difficult to predict, but the nailed on players are Schmeichel, Christensen, Andersen, Højbjerg, Eriksen, Wind and Højlund. I think the rest is definitely malleable, and there are some concerns in those positions. And with set pieces, Eriksen is the main penalty taker, free kick taker and corner kick taker. You've got Jensen, who's second in command for free kicks and corners. They face Slovenia in match day 1, so maybe a punt on a Denmark asset could really work out for you. But Slovenia are quite underrated. Don't underestimate them because they've got 8 wins out of the last 10 matches. They face England in match day 2, Denmark, and then it's Serbia in match day 3. But Eriksson actually took 50 corners from just 6 matches during the qualifiers. That was the most of any player. If I'm not mistaken, I believe I made 3 changes from the previous Slovenia lineup I talked about, and that's at centre-back with Brekalo starting over Blažič, and at right mid I've gone for Horvat, and up front it's Sporar, who has started most of the recent friendlies, and some Slovenians in the comment section said that Sporar will almost certainly start, and I believe they are correct. So a 4-4-2 is their likely formation with Oblak in goal. They face Denmark in match day 1, then it's Serbia in match day 2, and England in match day 3. In terms of penalties, I think it's Sesko who's the main penalty taker, and Serin should be the main free kick and corner kick taker. I think Slovenia can be very underrated, and they might be one of the dark horses of this tournament. They've got one of the best goalkeepers in the world and a striker with a lot of suitors in the Premier League. We're now on to the World Cup finalist France, and there's only one key change from the previous edition, and that's Kante in the midfield. It looks like Tchouameni won't be available to start in match day 1, but maybe in match day 2 or 3, Tchouameni will be 100% available, and that's where we could see him displace Kante, who has started the recent friendlies. Maignan should be in goal with a back 4 of Koundé, Upamecano, Konate and Theo Hernandez. You might be thinking, where is Saliba? I honestly think he deserves to start, but I think Deschamps wants to go for Upamecano and Konate, which has been reported by L'Equipe and other reliable sources. Kante will likely partner Camavinga, but it could be Rabiot instead of the Real Madrid midfielder, with Dembele, Griezmann, Mbappe just behind Giroud. This will be his last international tournament for France. They face Austria match day 1, who are in good form. I think it's 7 wins out of the last 10 matches. The Netherlands in match day 2 and Poland in match day 3. Mbappe is number 1 when it comes to penalties. Griezmann is second, and for free kicks, it's Griezmann who has the main duties there, and for corners it's also Griezmann, and Dembele is second. Mbappe actually scored 3 penalties from 8 games in the qualifiers, and he's nailed on to take all penalties when he's on the pitch. Next up is Austria. Watch out for them. They could be very, very overlooked, and they can cause some upsets. I have no doubt in my mind about that. They have a 4 million goalkeeper who will start in Pence, and they'll likely go for a back 4. Now, my main concern here is who will partner Lineheart, and it's between Woba, Trauner and possibly Danso, and the UEFA website have gone for Trauner and I've gone for Woba, and I could be wrong about that. So if you believe it will be Trauner or somebody else, let me know down in the comment section below. It will be Seawald and Lima as the 2 defensive midfielders, with Schmidt, Baumgartner and Sabitzer just behind the lone striker, and they face France in match day 1, which is enough to put most people off all Austria assets, but I think Baumgartner, Sabitzer and potentially their 4 million goalkeeper could be great value for money, and Poland in match day 2 could be a fixture to target actually. Of course, the Netherlands in match day 3 doesn't look great, and the same goes for their opener, and that's why Austria have a very tough task on their hands to progress to the round of 16, but I think it's still possible for them to get results in those matches. In terms of penalties, it's Sabitzer first and Arnautovic second when he's on the pitch. For free kicks, we've got Sabitzer and Kainz, and for corners, it's Wimmer, Kainz and Sabitzer in that order. Sabitzer scored penalties in the October international break and is expected to be first choice, and Gregoric, Baumgartner scored penalties in the 6-1 friendly win over Turkey in March, but Sabitzer was not in the matchday squad. The Netherlands have been on fire in their recent friendlies. They've won 3 of the last 4 games by a scoreline of 4-0, but unfortunately, they've had so many injury problems in the last week. Frankie de Jong and Koopmeiners will miss Euro 2024, and that's why you're looking at a completely different midfield and potentially a different formation as well, with a 4-3-3, and it's likely that De Ligt won't start, and instead it will be De Vrij for match day 1. So I've gone for Verbruggen in goal. He has a great record for the national team. Check out my best goalkeepers video on podcast, also the best budget players overall. I think Verbruggen is right up there with the very best. Dumfries, De Vrij, Van Dijk and Ake is the likely back 4, and once De Ligt is fully fit and available, he could displace De Vrij as that second centre-back. Then you've got some new faces in the midfield, and the one to look out for is Veerman, who can get a lot of assists, and he has done so in recent friendlies, creating many chances, and I think Reinders is very nailed on. The defensive midfielder, there are some question marks there as well, but I think Veerman is the best midfielder for the Netherlands. And up front, Xavi Simons, Depay and Gakpo. And to be fair, Xavi Simons is classed as a midfielder. If he starts, I put him at number 1 and Veerman in second spot. Frimpong will be the main competitor for Xavi Simons, so you could see some rotation there. But I still like the Netherlands and their fixtures. They're in great form overall. It's just a shame that 2 of their best midfielders have gone injured in the build-up to this tournament. Now, in terms of penalties, I think it'll be Van Dijk first, Depay second, and Gakpo third. And for free kicks, you've got Veerman and Gakpo. And for corners, Gakpo, Simons and Depay. Now, their manager Ronald Koeman talked about the penalty situation, and he said even now that Gakpo is part of the group again, Virgil is number 1 as a penalty taker. Now, he said this before the Euro qualifiers versus the Republic of Ireland in November last year. Depay was out due to injury at this point, so maybe you could see Depay over Van Dijk. That's something that I could be wrong about as well, but I would assume Van Dijk is first for penalties, and then you've got Depay second. In the penalty shootout against Argentina in 2022, Van Dijk was the first one to step up, and I think he'll be the number 1 penalty taker for the Netherlands. Another key injury to look out for is Robert Lewandowski. He will miss matchday 1 against the Netherlands, and in that same friendly, the striker you can see up front on screen, Swiderski, he also picked up an injury, so he's not nailed on to start. You could see Piatek take his spot there instead, and I think the original front 2 for Poland was supposed to be Milik and Lewandowski, and both of them are injured. Milik will miss the tournament and Lewandowski will miss matchday 1, so Poland have been very unlucky with their injuries, but they'll likely go for a 3-4-2-1 at the moment with Szczesny in goal, Bednarek, Dawidžić and Kiwior as the 3 centre-backs. Then you've got the 2 central midfielders there. Nothing has really changed in this position with this midfield 4. And I've gone for Zielinski, Urbanski and Swiderski. Now, Urbanski is a young attacking midfielder from Bologna, and we could see him get a surprise start. That's what the UEFA website predict, and they could be right about that. But the biggest question mark really is who replaces Robert Lewandowski. So you've got Swiderski, Piatek and maybe Buxa, and I think apart from that, my biggest concern is the left winger spot or the left forward spot, and that's where I've got Urbanski at the moment. In terms of penalties, Lewandowski is number 1 when he's on the pitch, and then you've got Zielinski just behind him. And for free kicks, Lewandowski takes the direct ones, and in terms of indirect free kicks, you've got Zielinski and Zizmanski, and for corners you've got Zielinski and Zizmanski once again. Now, with the fixtures, it doesn't look great, but matchday 2 against Austria could be good for Poland, especially if the likes of Robert Lewandowski return from injury. There are 3 key changes from the previous predicted lineup for Belgium, and that's really in the defence and midfield. I've gone for Witsel and De Kuyper as the centre-back and left-back respectively, and also Mangala taking Tielemans' place. Now, that one I'm not so sure about. It's still 50-50, and we could see Tielemans start in matchday 1 against Slovakia, but De Kuyper should start at left-back, and a centre-back pairing of Wout Faes and Witsel, 2 legendary hairstyles put together, and Casteels will be the number 1 goalkeeper for Belgium. Castagna is also nailed on for the right hand side, and the same goes for Kevin De Bruyne and Onana in the heart of that midfield, with a front 3 of Trossard, Doku and Lukaku. Now, sometimes Trossard can play on the left and Doku play on the right, but mainly it's in this way where Trossard's on the right and you've got Doku cutting in from the left with his pace and skill. Lukaku is one of the best strikers in international football, and with those fixtures, I'd really fancy the likes of De Bruyne, Lukaku and potentially Trossard to be great Euro fantasy assets. It's also worth mentioning that Thomas Meunier picked up an injury during the friendly against Luxembourg, a 3-0 win there for Belgium, and with Vertonghen and Feet still ruled out, the 23-year-old De Kuyper should start there, and that's the reason I've got him in this predicted lineup. And in terms of set pieces, Lukaku and Trossard are the main penalty takers. Trossard took one when Lukaku was on the pitch in the second last friendly for Belgium, and then against Luxembourg you saw Lukaku take the penalty. He's number 1 there, there's no question about it. For free kicks, you've got De Bruyne and Carrasco when he's on the pitch, and for corners the same thing, De Bruyne and Carrasco in that order. The next country covered is Slovakia, and the key change is at left wing, with Haraslin potentially being a decent Euro fantasy option. Dubravka will be in goal, and I think they'll go for this starting lineup. I've got a few doubts, especially at centre-back, so Guillaume might not even start, but Skriniar is very nailed on. He's one of the best defenders in his position. And in terms of what UEFA have on their website, they have said the following. So their manager also hopes that Kuchka, who scored in their last friendly, will be fit after suffering a left arm injury in April, and during the last friendly against Wales, he had his eyebrow stitched, but I still have him in the starting 11 there. And Vavro had slight pain in a thigh muscle, but is expected to be available, and he's the one who could take Guillaume's place there at right centre-back. For penalties, Duda is the number 1 penalty taker. For free kicks, you got Haraslin, Suslov and Duda. And for corners, Haraslin, Benz, Suslov and Duda once again. With Romania, I've also made several key changes to the predicted lineup, especially at left wing and up front. And apart from that, there's also one change at centre back, but the rest is also pretty much the same. You've got Man on the right hand side, you've got Stanciu just behind the main striker, and they face Ukraine in matchday 1 with Belgium and Slovakia to round off the group stages. They've got a 4 million goalkeeper in Moldovan, and I believe he will start. And apart from that, I think their 4 million defenders do offer some intrigue and ball recovery potential. Now, the biggest question mark is who will play up front in the absence of Alibek. So you've got Dragus, who is a likely option, but I've gone here with the striker that started a lot of the recent games. I don't want to butcher his pronunciation, so for the sake of it, I will not be going there. But in terms of penalties, you've got Marin and Stanciu as the 2 main penalty takers. For free kicks, you've got Marutan, Stanciu and Hadji. And for corners, Stanciu, Marin and Man in that order. There is an injury concern for Ukraine, and that regards Mikalenko. If that's the case, Sinchenko will slot to left back, and you can see Stepanenko alongside Shaparenko as the midfield partnership. But as things stand, Sinchenko isn't completely nailed on. I think he will start in matchday 1, but you can't really count on it entirely. And I think Ukraine will go for this 4-2-3-1 formation with Lunin in goal and a back four of Konoplia, Zabani, Matvivenko and Mikalenko if he's fit. Stepanenko and Sinchenko in the heart of the midfield with Zigany, Sudakov and Mudryk as the 3 midfielders, just behind Dovbyk, and they won 4-0 in a recent friendly against Moldova. And Dovbyk, as soon as he came on, within just 9 minutes, he scored and assisted for Ukraine, and the first 2 match days look quite promising against Romania and Slovakia, and matchday 3 is a bit of a different story entirely. In terms of penalties, it should be Dovbyk and Sakankov. For free kicks, it should be Mudryk and Sakankov once again. And finally, for corners, it could be Mudryk, Sakankov and Sinchenko. We're now on to Group F, the final 4 teams covered in this predicted lineups video and podcast, and Portugal should go for a 4-3-3 with Diogo Costa in goal and a back 4 of Cancelo, Ruben Dias, and most likely it'll be Pepe partnering him, but there's also the possibility of Gonzalo Inicial or Antonio Silva, and then Nuno Mendes as the left back, and there's another option to shift Cancelo to the left hand side and introduce Dalot as the right back, and even he can play as a left back as shown for Manchester United and Portugal in the past. The midfield 3 should be João Paulinho, Vitinha and Bruno Fernandes, and a front 3 of Bernardo Silva, Rafael Leao and Cristiano Ronaldo, who scored a brace against the Republic of Ireland, and one of those goals was absolutely spectacular. Now, Rafael Leao might not start. It could be Diogo Jota getting the odd start here or there, and maybe João Felix as well. That's the key contender for that left wing spot. It's between João Felix and Rafael Leao, and at the moment, I'm going for the AC Milan left winger. Let me know down in the comment section below what you think of that. Czech Republic is their first opponent in matchday 1, then it's Turkey and Georgia, and on the UEFA website it says the following: with Pepe appearing in Portugal's last pre-finals friendly, it seems Ruben Dias's defensive partner has now been found. Portugal can play in several different formations, including a back 3, with João Cancelo having the ability of playing on either flank. And if Portugal play this back 3, Gonzalo Inacio or Antonio Silva may start. Then you have João Neves and João Felix, who could also start if Roberto Martinez adjusts to his favoured 4-2-3-1 formation. And Ronaldo is still the main penalty taker, with Bruno Fernandes second in command. And for free kicks, it's Bruno Fernandes being the main man. And for corners, you've got Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo Silva, who can take them from either side. Cristiano Ronaldo scored 3 penalties in the Euro qualifiers, and if he's not on the pitch, Bruno Fernandes is next in line. I've changed things around a little bit in terms of the Czech Republic starting 11, and one of the key reasons why is Sadilek, one of the key figures in the midfield, fell off his bike and will now miss the Euros. That is very unfortunate, and it just seems very just whimsical and out of nowhere, but that's the way life can go sometimes. Stonek should be a 4 million option between the sticks. You've got Holles and a few other options here and there, but they're not really too interesting. The only players I'd consider from Czech Republic are the 4 million defenders or the goalkeeper, and potentially a Patrik Schick up front or Tomáš Souček in the heart of the midfield. They'll likely go for a 3-4-1-2 formation with Hozlek starting just behind the likes of Schick and Kuchta, who has been in good form recently. Czech Republic face Portugal in matchday 1, then it's Georgia and Turkey to round off the group stages, and I think Czech Republic assets could be quite underrated for matchdays 2 and 3, but in terms of them as assets individually, I'm not a big fan of most of them except those value picks like I mentioned earlier, and Patrik Schick is by far my favourite option. He's the main penalty taker, with Souček being second in line, and for free kicks you've got Jurasek, Sufal and Cerny, and as for corners, Cerny is also number 1, and you've got Jurasek in second place. Now, when we're looking at penalties, Souček should be second in line when Patrik Schick isn't on the pitch, and we saw this back in October in a 1-0 win over Faroe Islands, and Souček took the penalty when Schick wasn't there. But let's wait and see what happens at the Euros, and maybe some Czech Republic viewers will enlighten me as they did with the previous lineup. A few things have changed with the formation and also some key assets. For me, Stanek, Hranic and probably Schick are the 3 best options from the Czech Republic. Turkey have been very unfortunate in terms of injuries, and you could see a bit of a makeshift back four. Even Selik at right back isn't guaranteed to start, and we could see some big changes here in this position, but Gunok is nailed on as a 4.5 million goalkeeper. If Selik is fit, he will start as the main right back. And you've got Demiral, and potentially you've got the likes of Kabak, who are injured. I think he came off of an injury in a recent friendly. The midfield too should be a bit different to what I discussed previously. Kalanoglu is as nailed on as you can get, but you can also have Oskan there to partner him. And then for the front four, I've gone for Keveci, Akatuglu and Yildiz just behind Yilmaz, and I've changed things around a little bit because Yilmaz can play as a winger and also up front, which he does for Turkey, and Yildiz can play as a centre forward or on the left hand side, and that's what really happens for the Turkish national team. So due to these significant injuries in the striker and central defender positions, the defensive lineup has not been finalised yet. However, experienced players like Demiral and Ayhan are expected to play in these positions according to the UEFA website, so it could be Ayhan instead of Selik. Watch out for that space. It is still uncertain whether Arda Güler will start the game in the 11 or from the bench, and in a recent friendly he had a great cameo, but it was off the bench, so we could see him to come on for the likes of Keveci on the right hand side, but he can also play in central areas just behind Yilmaz or whoever happens to be the starting striker when Arda Güler comes on as a substitute. But there is still that chance that he starts. I might be wrong about that. Let me know down in the comment section below. As always, when we look at penalties, free kicks and corners, Kalanoglu is number 1 for every single set piece. You've also got a few other options who could be second in command, but Kalanoglu is the main guy when it comes to set pieces and open play for Turkey. The 24th and final team is Georgia, and I have changed the formation from the last predicted lineups video and podcast to a 3-5-2, and the two main players for me are Kasia, 4 million, who averages 6.8 ball recoveries per match for Georgia, and Kvaratskhelia, who we all know from Napoli, who won Serie A the season before last. He was a key figure in that title win. He's one of the best dribblers in world football. His ball control is phenomenal. He might not be the most consistent in terms of goals and assists, but he's playing up front here with Mikalce, who's another one who's quite underrated actually. I think those are the three I'd really highlight from Georgia, the two strikers and Kasia, and with Kvaratskhelia, of course, he is classified as a midfielder in this game at just 7 million. The first two match days seem decent against Turkey and Czech Republic, and then it's Portugal in match day 3, so you could find some value in this Georgia team. Now, UEFA do say on their website that the centre-back Kvaratskhelia missed Georgia's last friendly, and though 33-year-old debutant Gleveziani deputised well, Kvaratskhelia will get the nod if he's available. The same goes for Kitashvili, who was substituted immediately against Montenegro after feeling a small twinge in his leg. I do apologise once again for the pronunciations, but it is quite difficult to keep on top of 24 different teams and talking about probably over 11 players for each squad. Now, for penalties, Mikalce should be number 1 with Kvaratskhelia in second. When we look at free kicks and corners, Kvaratskhelia should be number 1, and you've also got the left central midfielder, Chakvetadze, who could be second for free kicks and corners as well. So that's the Georgia team covered, and all 24 lineups for Euro 2024 have been analysed in this video and podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure as always. Over the weekend, I recorded 8 videos and made over 100 graphics, so all the content for the week was laid out. And even today, things happen and certain things change. For example, John Stones is now back in training on Thursday, the 13th of June, so that kind of reiterates what I said. I believe he'll start. There are some rumours about the Netherlands and the likes of Denzel Dumfries and Xavi Simons could be benched, but I still think they'll start. And also Theo Hernandez is a slight doubt for Matchday 1. He was in partial training for the last couple of days and he could return to full team training on Thursday the 13th of June. He felt a knock on his left knee, I believe, after the Canada game, but I'm still quite hopeful he starts in Matchday 1, which I cover in the team selection video and podcast as well. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes and let's keep on pushing towards 24,000 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon, the Championships Discord server, the Euro Fantasy League, and the code is JCRHjQ, and also Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Matchday 1 and the rest of the tournament, and I'll see you next time.